Hey there, what's going on everybody? Thank you for joining us today on Jose's Opinion. Today we'll explain a recap on a 2017 fantasy film directed by Guy Ritchie and written by Ritchie called King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. But before that, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. King Arthur, a heroic monarch who has been a popular mythological and literary character for some time. It has been suggested that the real-life Arthur may have been a warrior/officer of Roman affiliation who led a British military force against incoming Saxon forces during the 5th to 6th centuries AD. He was described as a warrior, a knight, and a king who killed giants, witches, and monsters and led a band of heroes on many daring adventures. He is known for his Knights of the Round Table and for uniting the peoples of his land. Here is an alternative version of his story which begins with Uther Pendragon, his father. Fire brightens the screen, piercing dreams, lighting dreary corridors and burning buildings, while battles with mystical mages mean soldiers are as likely to be facing down supersized elephants as archers and swordsmen. Humans are dying and are about to be trampled by Mordred and his army. The story takes place centuries ago. Humans lived with mages peacefully, but all that changed when Mordred declared war on humans. Mordred, a corrupt sorcerer, sought great power through the use of dark magic. Mordred and his army make their way to Camelot, which is a castle city and court associated with the legendary King Arthur, and begin laying waste to the kingdom, seeking to establish the dominance of magic wielders, mages, over mankind. King Uther Pendragon leads his own army against Mordred's forces. Uther rides his horse to reach Mordred's stronghold while wielding his mighty sword Excalibur. With one swing, Uther slays Mordred and puts an end to his reign of terror. The war is followed by compromised peacetime until Uther's brother Vortigern leads a coup against Uther and the kingdom. Vortigern takes his wife Elsa underground to a pit, where he kills Elsa and spills her blood to sea witches in order to get the power of darkness and summon a demon knight to kill Uther. Uther gets his wife Igraine and young son Arthur out of the castle as Vortigern's minions, the Blacklegs, are sword Excalibur. Instead, he was stabbed to death with the sword by the demon. To protect Excalibur, he took the form of a stone vessel that contained it and slowly sank to the bottom of the sea. While Arthur, still a small boy, becomes the only survivor, who drifts away in a boat and eventually winds up in Londinium, and to be brought up in a brothel. As he grows older, Arthur spends his time on the streets, getting into trouble with other children and picking fights with those that harass him. As an adult, Arthur grows stronger and more cocky. Arthur tends to his friend Lucy, a prostitute, who was previously assaulted by a group of Vikings. Arthur is later called to speak to a commander after Blacklegs raid the brothel. Arthur outed a man in hiding named Goosefat Bill Turner, and he got into an altercation with the Vikings for hurting Lucy and forcing them to give up their wages. The commander tells Arthur that those Vikings were protected by the king, and therefore Arthur must pay for his crime. Arthur tries to escape the city, but is caught and put on a ship with hundreds of other men headed for the kingdom. Vortigern speaks to the sirens that granted him his power after he killed Elsa. He does not yet have the full power he seeks, and the sirens tell him that once he kills Arthur and takes the power of the sword, he will succeed. Vortigern then learns that the sword has been found in a stone pulled out of the ocean. When Arthur tries, he slowly feels the sword coming out of the stone. He sees flashes of images and senses a powerful and overwhelming energy that causes him passed out. Arthur wakes up in Vortigern's dungeon. The king enters and explains to Arthur just what he had felt, revealing his true lineage, who his father was, and how he is able to wield the sword. When Vortigern intends to hold the power for himself, so Arthur must be dealt with. Uther's former general, Sir Bedivere, is met by a woman known as the Mage, who is identifying herself as an acolyte of Merlin, was sent by Merlin to help Arthur. Vortigern sentences Arthur to execution. At Arthur's execution, the Mage hides and uses her powers to summon hawks to attack Vortigern's men, while Bedivere and his men help Arthur get away. They bring him to their hideout, where Arthur awkwardly faces Bill after their previous encounter. Bedivere tells Arthur they need his help in defeating Vortigern, but Arthur refuses to help them. The others then doubt that he really can wield the sword as it was believed. Arthur knows they want him to fight them, and he initially chooses not to, until he sucker punches Bill and tries to wield Excalibur by himself. This only causes him to faint once more. Bedivere later explains to Arthur how Vortigern had worked with Mordred the whole time to ensure that Vortigern would ultimately emerge victorious. His ultimate goal is to construct the Mage Tower, which had once been the source of Mordred's power, but if Vortigern completes it, he would be unstoppable. After Mordred rose to power, Uther came into possession of Excalibur from the Lady of the Lake, leading him to kill Mordred. The mage suggests to Bedivere to take Arthur to the Blacklands, where Merlin had destroyed Mordred's tower, so that he may train to learn how to control the sword. Arthur faces a number of creatures as he attempts to use the sword to its full potential. He receives help from a rebel named George. As Arthur tries to grasp the power of the sword, he sees a vision of the night his parents were murdered. He sees Vortigern's demonic knight form as he threw the spear at Igraine before dueling with Uther as he sent his son away. Vortigern overpowered him and nearly struck a fatal blow until Uther threw his sword into the air and let it impale him, thus turning him into the stone that held Excalibur and making him sink to the depths of the ocean below. Once Arthur understands his father's sacrifice, he decides to go kill Vortigern. Arthur and the rebels planned to meet with barons from other kingdoms to have them on their side to confront Vortigern. Arthur helps orchestrate meetings with the barons in the woods, which involves elaborate confrontations among his own men to show the barons that Arthur is someone they can follow. Vortigern's maid Maggie is secretly a spy for Bedivere. She informs the rebels that Vortigern has also met with a Viking baron to form an alliance. The rebels plan to attack Vortigern when he arrives in Londinium. Aware that his maid is a spy for Bedivere, Vortigern announces plans to meet with his barons in Londinium, sending a body double in his place. The rebels quickly realize the deception, but attack anyway, which was all part of his plan. In the process, Rubio is captured while Backlack is severely wounded and left behind. The others take refuge in a fighter's school, run by Arthur's mentor George, where they are quickly overrun by the Blacklegs. Seeing the mage being held at knife point, Arthur is overcome by his rage and unleashes Excalibur's potential, single-handedly killing all of the enemy soldiers. With a mighty swing of the sword, Arthur knocks the Blacklegs back and kills them all. As night falls and riots break out all over Londonia, the rebels take shelter in a safe house, where they are soon joined by Backlack and his son Blue. Vortigern's General Greybeard has followed Rubio, leading the two villains to find it. He does it anyway as Arthur runs in to get Blue out of there. Blue must watch as Vortigern kills his father as Arthur takes him away. Afterwards, Arthur, angered by his failures, throws the sword into a lake and runs into the forest. When he stops at a small marsh, the Lady of the Lake pulls him into her realm and shows him a vision of the future, where England has been ruined by Vortigern's rule and the people are left to suffer in misery. Recognizing that only he can put an end to his uncle's reign, Arthur reunites with Bedivere, George, and Percival. When they return to the rebel hideout, however, they discover all of their allies dead, Vortigern having found them thanks to information provided by Rubio. They encounter the captain, who delivers a message from the king. If Arthur does not surrender himself by nightfall, both the mage and Blue will die. Bedivere is able to get the former released in exchange for Arthur's surrendering both himself and the sword. Through a negotiation, the mage is released when Arthur goes to turn himself and the sword into Vortigern. Before anyone can harm Arthur, the mage summons a giant snake to come in and eat Greybeard and the other Blacklegs. The rebels then go to free the rest of Vortigern's prisoners and begin to battle the Blacklegs. Knowing what's about to happen, Vortigern takes his daughter Cadia down to the pit to sacrifice her and regain his demonic form. He brings Arthur to a completely different realm and fights him. Arthur puts up a good fight but is ultimately overpowered by Vortigern. Arthur then sees the vision of Uther before his death, with Arthur standing before his father. Before the sword hits Uther, Arthur grabs it, and Uther tells him it is time for him to wield Excalibur. Arthur continues the fight and tells Vortigern that everything that has brought Arthur to this moment is all thanks to Vortigern himself, due to his actions instigating Arthur to come fight. Arthur destroys Vortigern's blades and impales his treacherous uncle. Arthur leaves Vortigern with his dying breaths as the mage tower collapses. A while later, Arthur is seen constructing the Round Table. He knights George and Percival while keeping Bedivere and Bill in his circle. Arthur also cuts ties with the Viking Baron and his men to avoid further conflicts. The Vikings peacefully kneel before the new king. Arthur is then presented with his crown as he goes to face his kingdom. The people cheer as Arthur raises Excalibur in the air. In the aftermath, Arthur, George, and Percival begin building the Round Table, where Arthur and his knights will meet. Arthur also dissolves Vortigern's pact with the Vikings, declaring that they must respect England's power if they wish to avoid war. That's the end of the story. Please turn on notifications and leave a like. It really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.